Ever wonder what it would be like to peek into the minds of billionaires, elite athletes, and legendary artists? Well, today, we're doing just that. We're going to unlock the Tools of Titans, which is Tim Ferriss's amazing treasure trove of secrets from the world's most successful people. You know, this quote from Kurt Vonnegut really sets the stage perfectly. He said, "Out on the edge, you see all kinds of things you can't see from the center." And that is our whole goal here today, to explore those unique habits and wild perspectives from people who operate at the very edge of what's possible. So, what if you could actually borrow that playbook? Tim Ferriss is really clear that these aren't his own inventions. He calls them recipes for success that he's collected from hundreds of the world's top performers. So think of this as the ultimate toolkit for life. Let's open it up. All right, first up, it's not always about what you do, but how you think. We're talking about mastering your inner game. You know, the mental models and the psychological frameworks these titans use to win before they even step onto the field. This gets to a huge idea in the book. Our biggest fears, those things that keep us up at night, are often just illusions. The first step to conquering these mental monsters isn't to fight them head on. It's to just drag them out into the light and define them. Because if you can't define it, you can't defeat it. So, how do you actually do that? With this incredibly practical exercise called fear setting. It's inspired by the Stoics. You start by defining your nightmare. Get super specific about the absolute worst-case scenario. Then, you list all the things you could do to prevent it. Next, you figure out how you could repair things if the worst actually happened. Then you write down all the good things that could come from just trying. And finally, and this is the kicker, you measure the true cost of doing nothing. It's such a powerful way to break through that paralysis because it takes a huge, vague fear and just breaks it down into small, manageable pieces. Okay, here's another great tool for your inner game, the jar of awesome. I know, it sounds a little cheesy, but it's brilliant. See, our brains are literally wired to focus on negative stuff. It's a survival mechanism. But this simple practice fights back. Every day, you just write down one awesome thing that happened, put it on a slip of paper, and drop it in a jar. When you're having a tough day, that jar becomes physical proof, a tangible reminder of all your wins. It's a powerful weapon against self-doubt. So, our minds are tuned up, but what about the engine that powers everything? Let's dive into physical health, because for these performers, it's non-negotiable. This one is a real game changer. Think about it. Most of us are taught to work on our weaknesses, right? Well, the Titans approach completely flips that on its head. It says, forget about patching up your flaws. Instead, pour all your energy into amplifying your strengths, the things that make you unique and powerful. It's about finding that one thing you're amazing at and just doubling down on it. Okay, but let's be real for a second. What about consistency? We've all been there. You start a new health kick, and then motivation just vanishes. It's that age-old struggle, right? How do you keep going when you just don't feel like it? Well, here's the secret. It's not about motivation. It's about having a system. And this one is called Grease the Groove. It's a concept from a famous strength coach. The idea is simple. Instead of doing one killer workout that leaves you exhausted, you practice an exercise frequently throughout the day, but at a really low intensity. You never get tired. The story goes that his father-in-law used this to double his pull-up count at age 64. How amazing is that? It's all about consistency over intensity. All right, speaking of powerful habits, let's talk about something a lot of Titans swear by: cold exposure. And no, you don't have to go full Wim Hof and sit in a freezing ice bath. The simple version, the one you can start today, is just a 30 to 60 second blast of cold water at the end of your shower. Yeah, it's going to feel a little shocking at first, but that small dose of discomfort pays off with huge dividends in mental and physical resilience. Okay, mind checked, body checked. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty, how to actually win your workday with some tactical advice. Oof, this one is a hard truth, isn't it? Lack of time is lack of priorities. So many of us wear being busy like a badge of honor, but this statement just cuts right through that. It suggests that if you're constantly feeling rushed and out of time, it's not a time problem, it's a priority problem. So how do you find your real priorities? Try this super simple framework. First thing in the morning, and this is crucial, before you look at your phone or computer, sit down with a pen and paper, and just write down the 3 to 5 things that are making you the most anxious or uncomfortable, the things you're kind of dreading. Guess what? That feeling of discomfort, that's your compass. It's pointing directly at your most important tasks. If you tackle those first, you've already won the day. All right, here's some business advice that's so simple, it's just brilliant. The legendary investor Mark Andreessen was asked what advice he'd put on a giant billboard for every business owner to see.
His answer? Just 2 words: raise prices. And why? Because he believes the #1 struggle for companies, the thing that holds them back the most, is simply not charging enough for the value they provide.
Ever feel totally stuck in a creative rut? Like you have 0 good ideas? Well, try the 10 ideas rule. Here's the twist. The goal is not to come up with 10 good ideas. In fact, if you can't, try for 20 bad ones. Seriously, you just lower your standards to 0 and let the dumb ideas flow. It takes all the pressure off and it works. This is actually how Tim Ferris came up with the idea for his indefinite startup vacation, which literally changed his entire life. It's about quantity over quality to get that creative muscle working. Okay, wow. We have covered a ton of ground. Mind, body, work, the whole shebang. But look, knowing all this stuff is one thing, actually doing it is something else entirely. Knowledge without action is just trivia. So let's talk about the most important part, putting these tools to the test.
I absolutely love this quote from the entrepreneur Derek Sivers because it perfectly captures the spirit of this whole book. Treat life as a series of experiments. It's not about a massive, overwhelming life overhaul. Nope. The idea is to just be a scientist in your own life. Pick one little tool that sounds interesting and just try it. Run a small experiment and see what happens. So, I'm going to ask you directly, what's your first small experiment going to be? Are you going to sit down and do that fear-setting exercise? Maybe you'll grease the groove with a few push-ups throughout the day. Or maybe you'll just end your shower tomorrow with a blast of cold water. Look, the playbook of the Titans is officially in your hands. The only question left is, which play are you going to run first?